I am always shocked by how few realtors actually.
So the big question is, what are top agents doing to absolutely crush it in real estate? To get the answers, we interview the top real estate agents to learn their secrets to success. If you would like one-on-one access to over 26 of the top agents in the country to help you scale your business, then head over to eliteagentsecrets.com/partner, or you can just click the link in the description below. My name is Andrew Dunn.
And my name is Peter Michael. Welcome to Elite Agent Secrets.
Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Elite Agent Secrets show. Today we're joined by Dawn Grimshaw. She's been a licensed agent for 22 years and is also an investor in short and long-term rentals. Individually, she did over 17 million in production, and her team does anywhere from 35 to 50 million a year in production. Today, Dawn is going to be breaking down investing what you know, which is real estate, the tax benefits, and setting yourself up for retirement and generational wealth. Dawn, thank you for agreeing to come on the show today and share some secrets, some insider information. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
So today is going to be one of those episodes that is going to be vastly different than pretty much from majority of the topics that we've covered, given your topics that you have presented to us. So I'm super excited to dive in. But before we do that, give us a little bit of the backstory. How did you get into real estate? What did your first year look like? And take us on that journey.
So 22 years ago, I had my first child. Well, 23 years ago. They're 23 now. And I was looking for something that I thought would be fun and I could make my own hours. Isn't that what everybody thinks real estate is? You get to look at houses. You get all this free time. I could do it with a little one. So that's when I got my license. And, you know, in the beginning, it kind of was like that because I didn't really do it to make a lot of money. It was just more something to do and make a little extra spending cash that my husband didn't have any say over where it went. And, put my kid in daycare part-time and it was great. But as you go along and you try to build your business, you cannot do it part-time, and you can make your own hours only up to like working 24/7. And, as the business has grown, obviously, I've done more business and my life looks very different than I thought it was going to look. But I love what I do, and it still afforded me the opportunity to be at kid activities. I just, worked around my kids' stuff and worked around my husband's travel schedule and whatever else, and figured out ways to make it work.
So take us on a bit of a journey. How many deals, if you can remember back, did you do in your first year, even as a part-time agent? Was it like a one or two? Like what was it, zero? What were your first 2 years like?
Surprisingly, considering I was only doing it part-time, I actually got one of the Rookie of the Year awards. And I mean, it was like 10 deals. I mean, it wasn't like anything fantastic or phenomenal, but 10 deals for a first-time agent was pretty good. I was very happy with that. And then, my business grew very slowly at first because I had a 1-year-old when I started, and then I had a second child. And as those kids got into school is when I really, really started expanding my business. And then, in the last 5 years, since they've been pretty independent, it's really kind of exponentially grown.
Right. What was the jump when they kind of went into school? So you're doing like, say, 10, whatever, around that at the lower end when they were growing up. What was it like when they went to school? What jump did you have? Was that like 20, 30, 40 deals? Like, how did that
look?
It
was like 20 to 30. And then, the last few years, it's been, 50 to 60 individually. And then I do have that team that I formed. And I formed that team in 2008, and the structure's changed a little bit different over the years. So when I first formed that team, it was a partnership with another gal who had kids about the same age as me. And, it was a great support system because when she was busy with her kids, I could show houses. And when I was busy, she could show houses, and we just kind of supported each other. Then we added an assistant, and then her husband's job took her to a different market. And so then I started adding other team members under me to be a more traditional real estate team model where I'm the team leader, and I've got 5 other licensed agents under me that also sell.
This is awesome. I'm curious then, especially even one of the things I love to highlight with people like you, because I really I'm getting jazzed. I can feel myself getting excited about this, because for me, this is like super fucking important to everyone listening, right? You're like, yeah, we're doing like 40, 50 deals, and that's your like 17 million. I judge whether you say you should or shouldn't judge people, like whatever, fuck them. I judge the quality of a realtor based on number of deals, not cost of, not volume. I would much rather look at an agent who was in a $90,000 area but was doing 150 deals. That for me is far more impressive than selling a $100 million home. I'm not saying the other isn't impressive. The reason I think it's more impressive is one has systems and the other doesn't have to. One has a real business and the other doesn't have to. Like, you can meet some luxury agents and they'll do 50, 70, 100 million because they work with $10 million homes. You're selling 10 homes. You don't need any fucking systems for 10 homes.
Right.
Like, none. But you need a shitload of systems. I mean, to be fair, even if you're doing 30, you need systems before 30 because, like, all the leads for every deal, it starts getting hard. And I think when you're going, we're doing like 40, 50, 60 deals individually and, it's hundreds of deals, obviously, between you and your team, it's like, that's impressive. That's a lot of moving cogs. There's a lot of moving pieces there. And this shit can slip through the net, as I'm sure you are well aware, very easily when you are working with that amount of volume, right?
Yeah, we had to put some very serious systems in place because we did have instances where it's like, oh crap, did we get that earnest deposit? Like, people, you're just seeing so many deals and you just keep moving on to the next one that you forget about all of those little details that have to happen in a transaction. So yeah, we've got very, very strict processes that we follow every single time so that we don't have any of those oh crap moments.
We've definitely had similar situations where it's like, did we collect that? And then it was like, I thought you were. Oh no, I thought you were. And it's like, holy fuck. And it's like, it's nothing. It's just like a nature of doing a lot of business is that stuff starts to slip through, which is why like we heavily leverage systems. And then again, just before we dive into your topics, because I do want to get some juicy bits from your team. So you said, obviously you're doing north of 100 deals, it sounds like, between the whole team a year, give or take. And I'm curious about the team then. How big is it? How big is your team for doing that amount of volume? Is it small? Is it quite big? Is there a couple of really high producers? What does it look like?
So I have 5 other licensed agents that work under me. And then we have a full-time assistant who, she is licensed, but she doesn't sell. And she just does kind of all of our marketing, like the printing and the delivering of things and the tracking of things. And then we also have a transaction manager who works every single transaction from contract to close. And then I have a full-time marketing person, and all she does is just design and implement and social media and all of those kind of things for us. So, we couldn't do the volume that we do without the help that we have. I mean, we could, but we'd be insane. And then on top of, the real estate business, I also personally manage, which I don't necessarily recommend to everybody, all of my rental properties. So I have to have a lot of help and a lot of systems in place for all of those because it's a lot.
I mean, this is going to be a nice roll into your first topic, which is invest in what you know. I wanted to preface it with another one of our guests who came on. He's a top producer in Vegas, and I forget how many deals he did, but he went through being a realtor and he was selling a lot, and then he started to do property management. And then now he is a property manager and he still happens to sell just through some reputation, and he doesn't do any promotion. And I think he said he's got something like 600 or 900 properties he now manages. And he was just like, it's just a business I got into. It works for me, like I can just do it. And do you know what I mean? And it's like he's kind of taken this one thing and it's evolved and it's merged into this other thing. And this thing's now way bigger. It's way better for him. So I'm wondering whether this is going to be something that you end up going down the line if you've got a load of investment properties.
No, I will manage the ones that I own for now, and I will not manage for other people. I have managed for other people in the past, just a few here and there. Property management is so unglamorous, and you make so little money for the crazy situations that you end up in. So if it's your asset, of course it's worth it. But to manage somebody else's asset for the pennies that you make per month, you have to have the volume that he has. You have to have 600 houses to make a living doing property management when you figure you're making, 5 to 10% of the monthly rent on each one of those. So, $50-$100 a month,
Yeah, for sure.
It's not a lot of money. And so those people work very, very hard. And I have a lot of respect for property managers. And at some point in time, I would love to turn everything over to somebody. But I'm a bit of a control freak. And so I have a hard time doing that because I want to know who's in my buildings and I want to keep track of it all and control it all, which is not a good thing.
I think one of the most common statements we probably get when speaking with every person on this show and everyone out in the sphere is like, I'm a bit of a control freak. And then the ones who have grown big teams is like the biggest thing was not being a control freak. Like I did it all. So I want to dive into your first secret to success, which is invest in what you know in real estate. So unpack why that's your first secret and the whole topic in and of itself.
So I am always shocked by how few realtors actually invest in the thing that they talk people into investing in every single day. I mean, most realtors at least own their own home, although not all. There's a certain percentage of them that still rent, and that is beyond me. But even if you do own your own home, to start investing in rental properties is the easiest thing for you to do with your money, because that is what you do all day long, every single day. You know that market, you know the returns that you can get on that investment, and people are scared to do it. And I think the numbers are like 30% out of all of the realtors actually own investment properties. And so when I'm talking to other realtors, I want to set them up for success, not only in the real estate business, but also planning for future. I mean, there's so many realtors in our business that basically just work until they die because they can't retire. They didn't save money. And then we work so hard to earn these dollars, and we're taxed at the highest percentage you can possibly be taxed at because we're self-employed and we're not doing the things that we need to do to save that tax money. So owning real estate not only is going to get you a great investment return, but it also is going to save you a tremendous amount on your taxes. So you're giving the government so much less of your money.
Dawn, do you think partially it's because obviously, being self-employed, being 1099, we're not bankable, or at least not a lot of us are not bankable because we decide that we want to write everything off and be very aggressive on our taxes? Do you think that maybe has something to do with us not investing in real estate?
I think the belief that is true is maybe part of the reason. And part of the reason is people are like, well, I just don't have the money that I need for a down payment and closing costs, because you do need more for an investment property. You typically need 20 to 25% down. But the thing that people need to consider about investment properties is if you're doing a traditional conventional mortgage, which you can do up to 10 investment properties as a traditional conventional, you do have to qualify with your income, but you only need 2 years worth of income. But when you're doing a commercial loan, it's totally different the way that you qualify. So they're more looking at the asset and not just at you and your income. Commercial loans have some very big benefits and also some drawbacks. I mean, the rate's not fixed for 30 years, but the rate actually right now is a little bit lower than a conventional loan. In the past, that hasn't been the case. But the way that you qualify for them, and especially once you get over the 10 properties, or if it's a bigger property, you don't have a choice but to go conventional. They just look at it totally different. You don't have a choice but to go commercial at that point. But they look at it totally different. They're looking at the asset. They're looking at, can you support that payment with the asset, not necessarily with your income.
Yeah. So for example, the new product that came out, I'm sure it's in your market as well. It's the DSCR loan, right? Mm-hmm. And they're basically just looking at it from can this, rent support the payment? And if it does, it has to be within a certain percentage and you can go and buy it. And that loan almost is better than a conventional loan, especially at this time, right? Like you mentioned. So I'm always trying to figure out with Andrew, like, how do we acquire more and more real estate? Like, what could be stopping us? And I think sometimes is just not knowing really the market or the deals that are in the market, right? I think it comes from the lack of knowledge, because I think shopping for yourself or for your clients may be a little bit different than shopping for investment properties. I think, or, tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe it takes a different skill set to know whether the property you're about to buy is going to be a good investment or if it's going to be a money pit. And
it kind of depends on what you're buying. I mean, if you're buying like a single family house, it's pretty easy to underwrite that. I mean, like you can figure out what your mortgage and insurance are and what your rent would possibly be. I mean, that's a pretty easy one to figure out. When you're trying to get into some of the bigger stuff, then underwriting's a little bit more complicated, and you definitely want to make sure that the numbers work. But I think people are fearful and they think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to buy this place and I'm not going to rent it and I'm not going to get enough money to make the mortgage payment. And it's just going to be a money pit. I'm going to have to put so much money into it. But it's just like any other house that you sell or any other building that you sell. I mean, if you have had somebody look at it and make sure it's in good condition, which I know lately in the market, it's been a little hard to get home inspections and things like that.
Yeah.
With your experience, you should know walking into a building like, oh my gosh, this roof looks totally sketch. I'm going to have to replace this roof. Hey, it looks like there's been water damage here. I mean, we know when we go into a property, even if we can't get a home inspection, but hopefully now that the market's cooling, maybe some of those inspections will come back. But you just have to get past that fear. I mean, even in 2008, so I had rental properties prior to that. Okay, the market declined. My values declined. If I had sold that property that day, I would have lost money on it. But my rents never went down. Yeah. I still got rent the entire time that we were in our housing crisis recession, and it never changed. I mean, I never had that issue. And you know what? Now those same houses that I lost value on are worth twice what I paid for them because I didn't sell. You only lose money if you sell in a down market. Yeah. Rents rarely, if ever, go down.
Yeah.
They always go up.
I wish I just had this huge pot of money in 2008 and just like every home, I'm going to buy them all.
Don't we all wish that? I mean, really, even just 4 years ago, I wish I would have bought more. And I've bought, we bought our first one in 2004, but we were buying like one a year for a very long time. And, now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. And there's things that I looked at that were like duplexes or fourplexes or eightplexes back then. And I look at what they cost now and I'm a total idiot, but you can't go backwards.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and let you know if you would like access to over 26 of the top agents in the country to help you scale your business, then head over to eliteagentsecrets.com/partner, or you can just click the link in the description below. Now back to the show. With investing, I'm not sure if you know Brandon Turner, you probably do. He was one of the co-hosts of Bigger Pockets, right? Well, yeah. I was actually listening to an interview he did a little while ago. He was on another show because he's not on Bigger Pockets anymore, is he? And he was talking about his exact number here. I'll probably fuck up, but it was something like it took him 10 years to get to, I think he said something like 300 units, or was it 30 units? It was something like that. He said it took him 10 years to get to that amount. And it took him 2 years to go from 300 to 3,000. Mm-hmm. And he was like, the thing with investing and stuff, it takes time to learn and you figure out where the nuances and the things are. And he said, and then when you it clicks and you get it and stuff goes in the right direction, like you can scale it very, very quickly. And he's like, I'm already at 3,000 units. I mean, just for context, for everyone listening, this guy makes 1.5 million a month in cash flow income from his properties. And that's just money in his bank, right? That's excluding all the money he puts aside for maintenance and all that shit. Yeah. And I just think investing, like this is why all of us love it. Like I love it. And one of your one of the things you mentioned in your introduction is about short-term rentals. Now this has obviously become massive and there's some nuances where we sell in Florida. Like there's some legislation and shit around it, like some little bits and bobs. Maybe Pete, you can touch on the exact little bits there because we've had a few people reach out about short-term rentals. I'm more interested in that because like the cash flow of the people we know doing short-term rentals in essentially a week, they make what you'd make in a month in a long term. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, it's just a cash grab right now. Like get a house, short-term rentals, obviously it's got to be in a location where people are going to do it. But like you just think about going somewhere like Orlando where the theme parks are. Short-term rentals, that however much for a week, it's an amazing fucking opportunity for that stuff. Mm-hmm. So you're doing that. So I'd love to get a bit more insights on you in the short-term side because that's something I'm genuinely very interested in.
Yeah. So I have 7 short-term rentals in Omaha, Nebraska. And you would think, like, who the heck goes to Omaha, Nebraska? But you'd be surprised. We have a world-class zoo. So a lot of people, crazy enough, go on trips to go to the zoo. We get a lot of businesses, people coming in. We have the College World Series here, Berkshire Hathaway Days. Warren Buffett lives here, so he hosts Berkshire
Yes.
Hathaway here. And so we have some opportunities throughout the year to make really good money. Now, that being said, you're right. It is a cash grab. Everybody wants to do short-term rentals now. And it seems like every other day, some other realtor is like, oh, I'm starting my Airbnb next week. And, at some point in time, the market just saturates. We also own one in Arizona, right outside of the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. It's in Fountain Hills. And that area is very oversaturated with short-term rentals too. But that being said, despite the fact that a lot of people are getting into it, I mean, they still do very, very well. I mean, we make more money, a lot more money on our short term than our long term. But I think it's important going into it knowing, number one, this may be temporary. We don't know how long before somebody comes and makes some rule that you can't have short-term rentals there, or, the bottom falls out and people aren't traveling anymore, whatever happens. So it has to make sense numbers wise to also be a long-term rental. So anytime I buy something, I run it like a long-term rental. And then obviously if I can short-term it, I can make more money doing that.
100%. I mean, when I lived in New York, this is exactly what happened. The state changed the law because basically what was happening was the Airbnbs and the property prices were doing two things. One, they were destroying the hotel market because everyone was just doing short term. So the hotels were like, we're going bankrupt, and obviously that can't happen. And the other thing was the property prices and rents were rising so quickly that it was pushing out born and bred New Yorkers. So they put legislation in that essentially said, if they've been here for so long, you can't raise it above, like, it was such a tiny percentage, it was inconsequential. It was essentially like, you've got long-term tenants here who've always paid you, stop being a greedy bastard, right? And that was kind of the 411 of the legislation they rolled out. So now you can't Airbnb in New York for under a month's the minimum. You can't do it. So they do pass stuff like that because it can destroy certain parts of the economy that are actually really important. Like, it's important to have hotels. Like, they're an important part of our economy and of cities, and people don't realize that, like, undercutting stuff like that isn't kind of a fuck you to the man. It's kind of a fuck you to everybody. It definitely can go wrong. It's interesting though how you said you buy and it's like, this has got to work for long term in case the bottom falls out, which is such a smart move. And I do think a lot of people aren't thinking like that. I think a lot of people are just going, I can get $1,000 a month. So we've got two over literally to my right here. If people are watching on YouTube, I've got there's two properties. They're 100% short term, but we live in a national park, so you can't build property here. So we have a unique advantage that there's competition, but it's fixed. Like, there is only this many here. Like, there's not going to be any more unless people start renting out their own houses, right? Do you know what I mean? And it's like, so we have a unique advantage, and ours are fully booked basically every week of the year.
That's awesome.
But it's like, what's your competitive edge? So when you said, this is what my next question was going to be about your short-term rentals, was you said one of the places is extremely competitive now and saturated. Are you doing anything specific, maybe besides, I know reviews are obviously a very good way of standing out from the market? Because the bottom of markets fall out when people just race to the bottom, right? So it's like, oh, we're going to do $100 a day rather than your 150, and then you're getting priced out. So is this something you're doing to keep yourself in the game?
So I'm never the most expensive, but I never want to be the cheapest. And I would honestly rather not have it rent than do a significant discount, because it's just not worth your time at that point in time. And, the people who rent the discounted rates are typically not the best quality people.
The people who want discounts, you're the worst people.
Right.
Sorry, anyone listening, but it's fucking true.
I know. So, like, if you get somebody in there that just takes it because it's cheap, like, they're going to use it like it's cheap. And, when you have an asset that not only are you paying for the asset, but you furnish those things. I mean, it costs anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000, depending on what you're furnishing, to furnish those. And if you have somebody that comes in and trashes that and you have to replace a bunch of stuff, well, did that $100 a night really make you any money? No, you lost money on that. So I would rather keep my prices, not exorbitantly high, but towards the higher end, and then make up for it in amenities. And so when I furnish them, they are cute. People rent for cute. People rent for outdoor areas. People rent for reviews. So you do everything you can to get the best reviews, and then, do things that you need to do to be a super host. So you get primary placement on Airbnb. Yeah. All of those things all factor in, but I really think that the quality of what you're presenting and the quality of the pictures and the way that you market it, and then your reviews are what gets you the bookings.
Do you think the short-term rentals have a time and the place maybe for more seasoned investors versus like the long-term rentals that could, be for anybody?
I would say, in my opinion, yes, because there's a lot of things that you have to factor. Like, we have the one in Arizona, and then we have the ones in Omaha, but like, we went and looked when we were in Florida at some, like in the Fort Myers area, and like the numbers just don't make sense. Like, people think like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get all this money for rent. But when you look at the seasonality, and then you look at their taxes are exorbitantly high. When you sell in Florida, they actually recalculate the taxes based on the new purchase price. So you look at these taxes right now, and maybe these people are paying $2,000 a year. Well, when I buy it, all of a sudden the taxes are going to be $15,000 a year. Well, that doesn't work. Your insurance is a lot higher in some areas. Your utilities are a lot higher in some areas. And the cost to, furnish and maintain and find somebody to manage it, because you can't. I mean, some people try to manage it from another state, but you can't manage it from another state. If something needs to be done at that property and, I have to get on a plane to get there, that's just not realistic. And so by the time you pay somebody to manage it, like, the numbers just aren't necessarily going to work. And people don't understand how much it costs to do the setup. So you buy a single family that you're going to long-term rent. I mean, you have your closing costs and your down payment, and maybe you have to fix a couple of things, but that's it. Like, then you just put it up for rent and you start getting rent checks, and it's super easy. Like, these properties, not only do you have to fix a lot of things because they have to be really, really nice properties, but you have to furnish them. You have to pay the utilities. You have to pay, like, our Arizona house has a pool, so I have to pay the pool guy. I have to pay the landscaper. I have to pay the property man. Like, all of these things that people just don't think about. So I think a lot of people go into it thinking they're going to make all this money and don't really understand what's involved.
Yeah, I think the other wild card, right, is just doing it at a distance in an area that you may or may not be able to do it yourself. So, like, if you're in a state like I am, like in Florida right here, Miami all the way to Boca, desirable areas, but you have to know the ins and outs of certain areas, because they're not like, you're not going to put an Airbnb in Coconut Creek. Mm-hmm. There's just no need for that, right? And Coconut Creek is literally 10 minutes south of where I'm sitting right now. Right? Versus like Boca would be a great Airbnb place. However, they don't allow Airbnbs. And it's like an crazy $50,000 fine if they find you having one.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, that's another thing people don't realize is how many places have restrictions. So, I mean, I've had people tell me, oh, I'm going to buy a house here. And I was like, well, did you check? Is there an HOA? And they're like, oh, no, does that make a difference? I'm like, yeah, you probably should check, and you should probably check the rules. Because if you buy that to be a short-term rental and you find out you can't short-term rent it, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah. You managed to get yourself into a little bit of a problem there, right?
Yeah. So I just think people aren't educated enough on what that all entails. And so I think that people should work up to that once you have a lot of experience. And, if you want to do one in your area where you know the rules. I mean, even like paying the taxes. So every state's different. Nebraska is very unregulated. Of course, Airbnb still collects the taxes and sends it in, but I don't have to do anything extra as a property owner. Arizona has a lot of rules. Like, you have to register your property. You have to pay the state, the city, and the county that your property is located in every single month. I have to get on and file taxes. Even though Airbnb is sending my money in, I still have to get on and say, this is how much Airbnb sent you, because they just send them like one big thing. And if I don't do that, I get fined and penalized. Well, does the average person know that? No, they just like, I want a house in Arizona.
Just assumptions.
Is your to kind of not to change gears, but is your house hunting strategy different when you're looking at Airbnb properties versus a long-term rental?
Very much so. So with a short-term rental, quirky is always good. Things that, like a pool, like I would never want a pool in a long-term rental. I don't want that maintenance and the liability, but in a short-term rental, you want that. But like things like one of the houses we looked at in Florida had this really weird, like bar cave thing in the backyard. Like that would never be good for resale, and it would never be good for a long-term rental. But for a short-term rental, like something like that would stand out in a listing, and that would be very interesting to somebody. So some of those kind of weird properties actually would make really good short-term rentals.
That's a really good observation, actually. It's like the weird shit that people wouldn't want to live with, but want to try. It's like they want to sample, but they don't want to own it.
Yeah. And anything like weird, even like I saw one that had an outdoor bathtub, like something like that. I don't know that I necessarily want one in my house, but it would be fun when you're traveling.
Round here, that's just what the cattle drink the water out of. And they go back and they plug up and they're like, that's the fucking trough for the cattle. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you would like one-on-one access to over 26 of the top agents in the country to help you scale your business, then head over to eliteagentsecrets.com/partner, or you can just click the link in the description below.